It's been a busy couple of weeks, both in the Middle East and here at home in the U.S. with the government shutdown, and of course with the Israel-Hamas ceasefire peace deal that happened this week. I want to introduce Congressman Nathaniel Moran. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. This has been a historic week and very important events transpiring around the world that we need to highlight.
For sure. I want to start off with the ceasefire deal that happened almost 24 hours ago, early in the Monday morning hours here at home in East Texas when it happened. What are your thoughts on it so far?
Yeah, this is a historic day. But what we have to remember is this is just really the beginning of trying to build a lasting peace, because even though it was historic to get all these parties to the table and to have this agreement signed yesterday, truly there is still terrorism that exists in this world, and there are still many around the world that hate the nation of Israel. And we've got to stand strong with the nation of Israel to make sure to protect their sovereignty, to protect their security, and to protect ourselves, frankly, from a national security standpoint.
And the release of the hostages was only part of the 20-point plan that President Trump talked about. What do you think some of those conditions should be in that ceasefire plan?
Well, I was proud to see that President Trump demanded, frankly, an international force, an international presence, and you saw a lot of that yesterday in the signing. Is a lot of these nations from around the world that didn't think peace was possible were at the table to witness this agreement, to sign on to this agreement. That's important, because what we're going to need is we're going to need stability in that region long term, which requires international support, international pressure on all sides to make sure that the parties stay in line, stay true to the principles of this agreement, and that we do not allow the terrorists to gain a greater foothold or to grow their influence throughout the Middle East.
And Congressman, this war has been going on for just over 2 years now. In the midst of that, we've heard of talks of possible ceasefire deals until one actually happened not too long ago. How confident are you that this ceasefire deal is going to hold?
Well, I don't think we should be overly confident that this ceasefire will hold, because quite frankly, this conflict has been going on for thousands of years in the Middle East. And so it's not something that you solve overnight. And what you can do is put structures in place to begin to ensure accountability and transparency with all the parties. But what really needs to change is the hearts and the minds of those that are living in the Middle East, so that they internalize the desire and the need for peace and stability and prosperity long term for everybody in the region. That includes everybody on each side of this. But we got to remember, there's still a terrorist organization out there, Hamas, and they've got friends and allies with the Houthis and Hezbollah and many in Iran that still want to see the destruction of Israel. We cannot allow those influences to grow or to continue to have influence in the region.
We'll talk about what happens next here in a moment, but first, there's been some people that have said, this has taken way too long. What message would you have to those people that said that maybe coming to this point for the ceasefire deal took too long?
For the families of the hostages that were taken 2 years ago, it did take too long. We've got to remember who the cause of this atrocious behavior was, and that was Hamas. And it was an evil that was perpetrated on the people of Israel, and for these lives that were taken and the lives that were destroyed in the midst of this, the blame falls squarely on Hamas, and we cannot forget that. Now, for the families reunited, we're very excited about that. I was excited particularly to see the Berman twin brothers come back yesterday. I was in their home kibbutz of Kfar Oz just a couple of months ago, saw their pictures there in that little village, saw the bullet-riddled holes in the buildings where they were taken, heard the stories of the people in that village to understand what happened on October the 7th 2 years ago. It was horrible. Last week, we stood with a number of those families in Washington, D.C. to remember and to continue to proclaim the need to bring these families home. We were glad to see some of that happen yesterday, but truly, a lot of the evil that was done cannot be undone, the effects of that for these families in Israel.
And President Trump, during his address to the Israeli parliament, called this the dawn of a new Middle East. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a new day because there's new hope. And there's new hope because I think there's strength from the White House that's projecting that strength around the world that is beginning to stamp down the growing evil and the growing totalitarianism regimes around the world that really were growing in influence under the past administration. When the United States is not present on the world stage, when we do not have a strong hand to stamp down these totalitarian regimes, they begin to grow and they begin to push where they can. So President Trump deserves a lot of credit for this. He's restored strength, not just here domestically in the United States, but across the world. As a result, we see that peace deals are possible.
You mentioned President Trump received a lot of praise for this. Even his political rivals, former President or Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Biden as well, came out and said this is good for the world and peace across the world. What does that say about our political spectrum now?
Yeah, I hope that this is instructive for both Democratic and Republican individuals going forward. When it relates to foreign policy, we must remain strong and we must remain present on the world stage. The world with the United States is much safer, much more prosperous, much more free, and life can flourish. Without the United States having influence around this world, it becomes a national security risk for us, but it also becomes devastation for the rest of the world.
You know, there's a lot of uncertainties and a lot of questions that need to be answered with this ceasefire. Who's going to oversee the ceasefire moving forward? Should U.S. troops be involved in that?
Lots of questions to answer. Certainly, we need to get to those questions step by step. We took a good step this week. I think we've already got 200 troops on the ground in the region. Glad to see that we are participating fully with this international force. Believe again that the United States needs to have a physical presence and a hand there. To the extent that we need to do that for the duration, we'll have to see how that plays out.
What about who's going to pay for the rebuilding and oversee the ceasefire? Should American taxpayers go towards world issues like this?
There's certainly a lot of resources in the Middle East and those countries that are geographically closer, but we need to have an investment in opening doors in that direction. And the safer and the more prosperous and the more stable you can make a region, you'd be surprised how quickly private funds will flow in for investment. There's a lot of opportunity for these areas, particularly around the world, that have lots of resources, that have the desire to grow their economies. A lot of opportunity for private businesses to go in and invest, so long as they know that the risk is low and that there is security in the region. So that's what we want. If we can establish a secure region where people get along, private investment's going to flow.
And let's talk about Gaza and Palestinians. You know, Israel also had hostages that they released. Palestinians back to Gaza. What does that rebuildment look for them? Obviously, Gaza and Palestinians have seen lots of damage as well. How do we help them as well?
Well, unfortunately, you know, when you do a deal like this, you do have to. Israel has traditionally had to release some prisoners. We saw that yesterday. Most of those are guys that are not good guys, and so we've got to keep a close eye on those. Education in the Gaza Strip is going to be very important as we see the next generation raise up. We want to make sure that the education that goes on in those communities is such that it does not promote hate towards Israel, does not promote hate towards the United States. That's traditionally what has gone on in that region. That cannot be the case. Otherwise, we're just going to see this same thing happen again. But when people have food and when they have clothing and they have shelter and they have their basic needs in place, most families, even in that region, will say, you know what, we want a better life for our kids, and that's what we want. So we want to be able to see the infrastructure rebuilt in such a way that it promotes those basic needs for those in the region and also economic opportunity, because the more that opportunity exists, the less they're going to be likely to adhere towards a terrorist mantra and to help the terrorist organizations locally.
And the release of the hostages is just the first step you mentioned of a long-term peace deal. How confident are you that, you know, we talked about this earlier, but how confident are you that we won't see any more escalations around the Middle East, even in Gaza?
History would tell us that we shouldn't be confident about anything in that region, and it's just a day-by-day, minute-by-minute effort, and that's what we need to put our minds to, and we need to make sure that we have a collective group of international countries that are dedicated to that effort, that are going to stand firm against the evil that Hamas perpetrated, against the evil that may rise up, that has traditionally risen up against Israel. We need to make clear that we stand on the side of Israel. And as we do that, I think that strength in the region, that presence in the region, will help to reduce the possibility or the probability of future attacks like we saw on October the 7th. But you can never discount those, because truly there is evil in the hearts of men.
And Congressman, there's another issue here at home that a lot of constituents are worried about, is the government shutdown. We're 14 days into this shutdown now. Where do things stand right now?
Well, right now the Republicans have already passed a measure in the House that would fully fund government for the next 7 weeks or until November. We did that in mid-September. We sent that to the Senate. The Senate Democrats have blocked that effort. We need the Senate Democrats to do what's right by the American public, become reasonable, and to pass that clean 7-week CR, which is sitting in the Senate right now, ready to go to the president's desk, and he's ready to sign that. So right now we're waiting on the Senate Democrats to be reasonable. The Republicans have been reasonable. We will continue to be reasonable in these efforts, but the Senate Democrats and the House Democrats, frankly, have asked for everything in the kitchen sink to be added back on for a 7-week CR, including undoing all the great work we did in the One Big Beautiful Bill. The Democrats want to add back $1.5 trillion in wasteful spending that's unnecessary. They want to take away the $50 billion rural health care fund that was set aside that's going to impact East Texans immensely if we let them do that. So there's a number of things that the Democrats are demanding, including taking away the power for rescissions, which is the power to effectively cut out waste in the federal government, and we don't want to see those things happen. So we're not going to allow them to do those unreasonable things as we move forward. But we've got a 7-week CR that they have voted for more than 3 times in the last 13 months. They need to vote for that. They need to get the government back open. This shutdown is not helpful to anybody.
And we have a lot of federal workers here in East Texas. We have TSA workers as well at Tyler Pounds and East Texas Regional. We've also seen reports across the country as well that federal workers are going to food banks because they don't have money from that paychecks. Is that something we're seeing here in East Texas, an increase of federal workers going to food banks? Well,
we haven't seen that yet, but I know I've been in contact with the food bank, and they are doing a great job preparing for that possibility. I see the TSA guys every week when I travel to D.C., so I look them in the eyes and we talk specifically about what's going on with them, and my heart breaks for those guys. Again, a shutdown is not something that I seek out, nor is it something the Republicans seek out. It's not good for the taxpayer. It doesn't save money. It generally shuts down the things that we want to see happen. It furloughs people to go home and not do any work, and then they come back and then they actually get paid for not doing any work. And then those that are considered essential stay at work and don't get paid during that time. Now, President Trump has done a good job of finding some money for the WIC program here in the first couple of weeks, and also for the pay of our military and our law enforcement. That's great, but you know that only lasts so long. If this thing gets prolonged further, we may not be able to continue to do that. But that's on the Democrats, who are being unreasonable at this point. Republicans have already passed a clean funding bill. The Democrats in the Senate need to let that through.
You know, I think $8 billion of unused research dollars from the Pentagon have gone to pay our troops as well. TSA is also getting a partial paycheck, but if this government goes any longer, TSA won't get any paychecks further on. Do you support to back pay as soon as the government reopens?
Oh yeah, they're gonna get back paid. There's a 2019 law that mandates that they get back paid, and to the extent that there's some interpretation that would not be the case, I'm certain that we would make appropriations to do that. Again, these folks are caught in the middle. It's not their fault. They're just trying to do a great job for the American public and the job that they're hired to do. It's our fault in Congress for not having the appropriations done. If there's somebody that shouldn't get paid, it's us in Congress. And so I'm happy to stand for the payment of those individuals that are caught in the middle. But we don't want to put them through this. And there's no reason to put them through this. We just need to get back to work. We need the Democrats to be reasonable.
What programs would you prioritize for this spending bill if both Democrats and Republicans have to come together for a short-term spending bill at the least? What programs would you guys prioritize?
Well, on the short-term spending bill, it's 7 weeks just gives us the amount of time to debate, discuss, and decide these long-term important issues. But the Democrats, in asking us to undo $1.5 trillion in savings that we just did in the One Big Beautiful Bill, just for a 7-week continuing resolution, is absurd. And when you look back at this 7-week continuing resolution, it actually is a Biden-era budget and appropriations bill that they voted for, that it contains Biden-era policies that we're just continuing in order to have those very tough appropriations discussions. We've made good progress on appropriations. There's 12 bills. We had 3 done. The Senate had those same 3 done. We had actually formed a formal conference committee, which has not been done in decades. And that was going to amount to about 70% of the total discretionary funding needed for the federal government, those 3 bills of those 12. And so we were making great progress, and the Democrats put a halt to that progress when they decided not to vote for the 7-week CR.
Something else that's been an issue with this government funding and how to reconcile it is healthcare subsidies.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Democratic talking points on this are totally false and misleading, because when you look at what they're actually saying, what they're asking to do is they're asking to continue in perpetuity a COVID-era subsidy program. It's an enhanced ACA subsidy program. So it's not the original program. And that's what I think folks need to understand is the original ACA subsidies are not going away. In the middle of COVID, the Democrats put in place a 5-year temporary program to enhance those subsidies, to expand those subsidies, and the Democrats set a 5-year deadline, a date when it would expire, and that's at the end of this year. That's totally appropriate. But the old adage, there's nothing more permanent in government than a temporary government program. And so that's what the Democrats want to do now, is make that program, which was a COVID-era enhancement of the original subsidies, they want to make it permanent. It's going to cost the taxpayers about $400 billion over the next 10 years. It did nothing over the last 5 years to reduce the premiums of those that were actually taking those the subsidies. That actually just subsidized the profits of the large health insurance companies. Premiums went through the roof in the last 5 years. Government subsidies don't work. What they do is they drive the cost of the good or the service up, and that's what's actually happening. That's what has happened in the last 5 years. That's why I oppose the extension of those subsidies.
I know President Trump has also talked about not funding some federal programs if the Democrats don't come to the table on this. Is that something you agree with or support, even furloughing federal workers?
Yeah, well, the president's got to make some tough decisions. And when President Biden was in office, one of the things I talked about as we got close to the possibility of these shutdowns was the fact that when you shut down government, you actually cede a lot of power to the executive branch, and they get to decide what's essential, what's not essential during that shutdown. And there's the possibility of making long-term decisions during that shutdown. That's one of the reasons that the Article I branch of government shouldn't allow for that shutdown to happen, because effectively you cede over the authority that's given to you under the Constitution to make those appropriations and direct the executive on how they should make those appropriations. So the Democrats have done that by blocking the clean funding bill that we put in place. And had they not done that, that power would not have been ceded over, but it has been ceded over, and they may see some long-term changes in government as a result of that.
That's a good point you asked. Long-term, is there maybe some constitutional amendments that can be made by Congress to force Congress to pass some sort of spending bill so the government shutdown doesn't happen again?
Well, we don't need a constitutional change on that. What we do need is a bill like my friend Dusty Johnson has proposed from South Dakota, and that is, if we get to a shutdown period, then there's an automatic 14-day continuing resolution, and then every 14 days it continues again until we get the appropriations process done. That takes away the gamesmanship, takes away the brinksmanship, takes away the political theater that surrounds these shutdowns. Again, these shutdowns are not something we should desire, nor should we roll over on to get out of. We cannot decide bad long-term policy for the taxpayer just to get out of a short-term shutdown. So that's where we're at right now. I'd like to see something like that happen so we don't get back to this point where there's a shutdown. Both sides traditionally have used it for political gamesmanships over the last 40 years. We don't want to see that happen anymore. We need to do right by the American public. We need to get our business done and put appropriations in place.
Congressman Moran, anything else worth mentioning?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep.